are there poking their nose in everybody's business. I've lived here all my life. Imagine I know all the history, the tradition, the culture, and everything with me. You invite me to your homes and I come. Then the little nephews in the house, they rush to me, Uncle Kwame, how are you? I said, I'm great. Now they want me to tell them about Africa. Do you think I'll ignore them or I'll teach them everything they need to know? I'm going to teach them, but they are kids. The systems out there does not allow this topic to be treated openly. When a child knows something new, he or she is rushing to the schools with the same message. Sir, madam, do you know this? My uncle from Ghana taught me this. I would love for you to tell me more about it. Can you show me the books to read? The books are not on the shelves. They have cleared all of them. A teacher like that is also afraid to teach the child the same thing the child needs. So then they said, you know, when you teach this to the children, they will feel bad. Really? If your children are going to feel bad for knowing the truth, how about us? How do you want us to feel? They don't care. Look, a child like that will not sit idle. He knows something. He wants their friends to know it too. So he will spread the message. But then there are friends in the schools. Not all of them are from the black communities. They have Caucasian friends who pick the topic. At 5 p.m. they are also by the dining table with their parents. Mom, Dad, do you know this? My friends were talking about it in school. I don't know it. Kindly help me to understand. But their parents said 400 years of enslavement, of our ancestors being shackled to each other, is in the past. We should forget about it and move on. Really? Look, they will lie to their children that they don't know or they don't remember. But they do know and remember everything they don't want their children to know. Take, for instance, Christopher Columbus. We grew up learning he who discovered America, but the man never made it there. 1492, he got lost in the West Indies. The natives there found him, they saved his life. What did you do? He killed so many of them to take over their land. In America, George Washington became a president. How did the Washington family earn their fortune?
Slavery.
Is this not American history?
It is.
Why are they not teaching it in the schools? Because it's critically racial. You teach it this way, their children will now get to know that their ancestors were not the heroes, but they were the villains towards humanity. And that's something that is terrifying. And the final point is that each and every time they look at you and I, they still see the powerful and resilient ancestors in us. For 400 years and above, our ancestors were the ones who were shackled to each other, went to the Americas, and enslaved on those plantations. They worked every single minute. After the trade came to an end, they went through Jim Crow, survived it, went through lynching, survived it, segregation, police brutality, all these systems, they survived and their children are still standing here with me. Which group of people could have done that? None. But we did.
Yes.
And that's exactly what is terrifying them. They think about it all the time. How did they survive this? But they don't get the answer. We do. Our ancestors were powerful. And so whenever we walk into the same space with them, they are terrified. Yeah. For me, I see the 500 years of our ancestors, the time they spent in the chains and shackles, as a head start that we gave to them. But then they are still terrified anytime we get the same opportunity as them. The little we get, we make use of it. But they are terrified of us. Why? And one thing, they are scared if we get to know the entire history.
Come on.
We would want to treat them
The
the
same.
way they would have treated us if they were the ones in our shoes.
Yes.
Retribution and vengeance is all they think about. That's why they don't want the history out there. So for me, if you stop me on the street and you ask me why they call this topic or the history in America critical race theory, I'll give you just these 3 points. A long time ago, we lived on a very big vast land. And this entire continent wasn't called Africa. The oldest known name of the land was Akebulan. Akebulan is a word from Kemet in Egypt. It means land of humanity. Mother of all creation, some say it is the Garden of Eden. Prior to the Europeans' arrival, that was the name. We have been on this land for a very long period of time. At a point, our ancestors happened to fight each other. They fought for territorial expansions, and due to that, they had victims of wars. But they were not enslaved. They were inducted and integrated into various cultures and traditions. They practiced a system called indentured servitude, which was different from slavery. But for some reason, whenever you raise the topic of slavery, people jump into a defense mode. They said Africans were practicing slavery before the Europeans got here. So I asked them what form of slavery it was. I decided to do a research on my own. So I read from Patrick Manning, Paul Lovejoy, Professor J.K. Ankwanda, Akosia Adoma Pebi, Professor Ayikwe Ama, Walter Rodney, and various other authors. From the definitions and the examples they gave, I got to realize as Africans, we had a system, but that system can never be compared to slavery. In the sense that when the ancestors fought each other, they brought them into the land, inducted and integrated, not enslaved. So they were not placed in chains and shackles. They even went into agreement with them that you are going to serve for a particular period of time. The maximum years will be 7 years, and then you get your freedom back. Meaning freedom was guaranteed for them. Even though they were not shackled, they still got their freedom. You are going to serve. So probably you were a warrior. You lost a battle and you don't have to fight anymore. You don't have to do anything for your community. We are here. We are bringing you into our military. You train, protect the land with us. If you are a farmer, you work on the agricultural field. You bring food to the table. Everybody gets to eat some. You get to eat. If you are a healer, you have that technique, I have this technique. I'm going to learn yours, you will learn mine. Blend it together and heal our people. In that system, you could own properties. In that system, you could grow through ranks to become a prominent person. In that same system, when you give birth to a child, the child is not you. You are not a property, so your child will not be a property. So the child does not automatically inherit your status. That was the systems our ancestors were practicing. They never branded them. They never stripped them of their identities. So why are they comparing this system with whatever they practiced? In slavery, we all know what happened to our people. They were kept in chains and shackles, starved for years. Then they were branded. Their names got stripped of them. They lost their heritage due to that. And when they were in the chains and shackles, their children were not theirs. Because you are a property, your child will also be a property. They were snatched away from them and sold into another plantation. So why are we comparing this? Do you think a slave and a servant are the same?
No.
So when they said they are the same, I asked them if they can tell me the two of them are the same, then I will believe them. But then we all know the systems are vast. The two of them are different. So we should know the difference. For decades, centuries, we have been on this land. At a point, our ancestors decided that they will invite these people, they will allow them to be with them. That was in the year 1400. When the Portuguese started sailing across oceans, they made contact with this land. First thing they did was to change the name of the land. The name was changed from Archebuland to Africa. And the word Africa, according to historian, came from a Latin word Africa. And it means a sunny and a fertile land. Others believe it came from the Greek origin Afrik, A-P-H-R-I-K-E. It means a land without cold or a place of heat and horror. And you see, the reason why they call it by that name was because they were not doing well under the sun. They were getting burnt. So then they thought it was horrible. But then you see in Ghana, or let me use the word West Africa, and then the griots, the historians, the storytellers, they believe the actual name Africa came from a word Afra. Afra is actually an Akan word, and the Akans believe that's the name of the goddess of the sun, and that makes Africans the children of her people. As Africans, God has blessed us with one particular thing. The most important and expensive thing in this whole wild world is actually melanin.
Look at our skin.
You see, the melanin in us are helping us to heal, we grow. That was why they decided to call us by that name. So people say we are the children or the people of the sun. For decades, they continued sailing until 1471. Fernando Gomez, under the leadership of Prince Henry, the navigator, brought the Portuguese to this land. They saw gold and started picking them, decided to name the land after the gold. So they named it Gold Coast. Togo, Benin, Nigeria was then named the Slave Coast because of the enslaved people. The captives they got from there were enormous. So they decided to name that land by that. So then they went to the west side. West side was Ivory Coast. Ivory from the elephants. Practically wherever they have been to, whatever they benefited, they will name the land after that. In the year 1481, November, that was when King João II took over in Portugal, wanted to build trade centers along the West African coastline. He sent Don Diego de Azambuja, commissioned him with hundreds of ships, hundreds of builders and building materials on board to come to these lands to build their very first trading centers. So then Don Diego came here and then approached the king. Nana Kwame answered the first, but then Nana Kwame answered refused to give them the land. He told them that, look, I have been here with you for multiple times. You have been traveling here to trade with me and going back. I love that one. I don't want to give you a land to build anything permanent. So he sacked them from his palace. The people left, enriched their proposal, and came back to him. They are very cunning and deceptive. They came countless of occasions, but then he kept sending them away. But then finally he was convinced that they actually meant war. So he gave them the land closer to the shore. They were to build a trade center. The trade was in gold, ivory, pepper, spices, and some other things. But the people ended up building the Elmina slave dungeon. With those chambers at the bottom of them, which they later transformed into a slave holding cell. What was the purpose for? For that chamber. If you and I come together today to build a mall for the people of this Asim Manso community, the chiefs have given us this land here. Would we build a prison in a mall?
No.
Let's say I want to build a house, and I know for a fact that as long as I live, there is no way I will use the basement. My children will not use it, their children will not use it. Would I include it in my plan? No. But the people did include that chamber in their plan. So what was the purpose for it?
Slavery.
If not for the enslavement, what was it for? For decades, they traded with us actually to cover it up. They got gold, ivory, pepper, spices, and they paid our ancestors with nothing. They were giving tobacco, whiskey, mirror, schnapps. How much are they? Tobacco for gold. Today, 18 carats of gold is worth thousands of dollars. But those were the items they gave our ancestors for all these precious minerals. Do you think that was a balanced trade?
Absolutely
It wasn't. 1492, when they made it to the West Indies, they continued to the Americas. By 1502, around the area at Massachusetts, they took the land from the original owners. The Native Americans, the Red Indians, were enslaved on their own land, used on plantations like tobacco, cotton, coffee, sugar cane, after they had formed the New England. But the people were not doing so well. They were dying. That was when labor force came crashing. So one particular person, his name Bartolomeo de las Casas, a Spanish, Portuguese, Roman Catholic priest, came with a suggestion and a proposal that the African men and women across the oceans look stronger than the natives of America. So the best option is to go get the Africans to come and help them solve their labor problem. So the people sailed to this land. When they got here, they sold the message. They delivered every message to their various counterparts. But the very first set of enslaved ancestors they got from this land, unfortunately, they got them from our own leaders. Through manipulation and deceit, they went to them telling them that, look, we have been here with you for about 5 decades. We realize each and every time you fight the battles, you bring your war victims into your land. That practice will put you in a harm's way. If you keep having them closer, they are hurt and they will be planning to learn your strength, your weaknesses. They will fight you and there is nothing you can do. So let us help you out. We came with weapons, guns and gunpowders. We'll provide you with some. Protect your land. In return, you will have to pay us with your war victims. So at this point, I call my own leaders, those ancestors, I call them greedy and naive. Because hunger for power drove them into believing that these people actually had their goodwill at heart. So when they would give me guns and gunpowders to protect my land, I can give them the victims of war. So they gave the victims of war out and they took the guns and gunpowders. That's why the people always tell us to the face that we sold each other. And I believe we did. Yes, I'm also of the view that we did, because in business there is something called barter trading. I give you something of value for something of value back. When they gave you the guns and gunpowders, they told you what you must give in return, and you came with that same thing. So what do you think you were doing? For decades, that was how they got their enslaved people from this land. The captives from war were the ones that they capitalized on. But then when the time came, the man started shooting all the way to the highest peak. The Dutch, the Danish, the Spanish, the British, the French, all of them came following the Portuguese to this land, and they had to fight each other. The European forces fought themselves for nearly 130 years. 1651, the British took over, introducing raiding, kidnapping, ambushing, burning homes. Now, they took matters into their own hands, went all the way to the northern sectors, crossed to Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. They raided from that area all the way down this way. People were made to walk for so many miles. The historian Akosia Adomapebi provided us a book entitled The History of Indigenous Slavery in Ghana from the 15th century to the 19th century. In that book, she stated many slave markets were used on this land, but then Gold Coast, Ghana had about 63 slave markets. We have Salaga, Sampa, Jenani, Ketekrache, Picoro, Atonso. We have Asim Manso, Cape Coast Castle, Elmina, Fort Amsterdam, Fort William, Senya Breku, Apam, all the way to the Christiansborg Castle in Osu, Accra, just to mention a few. The British historian W.E. Watt also traveled around that same period. He wrote a book entitled The Short History of Gold Coast, emphasizing that many of the slave markets were playing a role. But then, two of them played a historical role. That's Asamoah, the busiest, and that Salaga was the largest. The distance between them is over 400 miles, a journey of over 653 kilometers. The ancestors will have to walk without shoes, almost naked. They walked through the forest receiving whips, but not all of them were captured from Gold Coast. Remember, some were captured from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Niger is about 1,100 miles from here, and they walked from there to get here. On their ways, they got to the area at Salaga. Salaga was when they were fed, not because they were hungry. They fed them because they were looking too weak. They need them alive to continue the journey. As food was provided, they were moving them group by group. But then they had to go through the Mole National Park, a park full of wild animals. The animals attacked the ancestors. These captors realized their commodities were getting lost, so they have to protect them. They went into the chains and shackles, selected the weaker captives, took them on a walk, tied them to trees, gave them multiple whips. The blood attracted the animals. Whilst the animals were feeding on them, they got the rest out of the park. They succeeded by sacrificing some of our ancestors. They met at Pra. The Pra River is huge, and so it was taking some of them away. But then how do you expect these people to swim with shackles? They couldn't, so a lot of them got drowned, and they were buried just at the bank of the river. The women in the chains and shackles went through hell. Our mothers in the chains and shackles, some of them will have to go through their monthly cycle with the cramps, they walk with it. Some were pregnant, they were walking with it. And so, each and every time they look into the eyes of their siblings, they felt heartbroken and they cried. The people thought they were crying too loud to give away their location, so they shut them up, forcing stones into their mouth and having it tied around their necks. If they wouldn't use that, they would gather leaves into their mouth and cover it up. That way you get to shed tears, nobody hears your voice. All these aside, they were being raped. When they got here, they were hungry, dirty, skinny, and very, very tired. At this point, they had to feed them, not because they were hungry. They fed them because they were looking too skinny. No buyer wants such a person, so they provided them with food. As food was provided, they looked at the men. All those who have grown bushy hairs and beards would then have to be shaved off using sharpened knives and broken bottles. After, they will force their jaws open, count their teeth to get to know their ages, group them before taking them to the river. When you went to the castles, you heard about these ancestors who were brought back home. The remains of Crystal from Kingston, Jamaica, Samuel Carson from New York City, United States were the first two to be brought here in 1998. We celebrated the year as the Emancipation Day, first ever, 31st of July, was when we decided that they would bring these remains back. So they flew them all the way from the United States. And this from the Caribbean, Jamaica. Crystal was actually captured from Gold Coast to Jamaica. When they got there, she wouldn't eat anything. She decided to go on a hunger strike, and then she was caught in the act. They forced her to eat using the chisel and hammer method. Their jaws were tightly closed, so they knocked their teeth out, placed the funnel there, dished the food into the funnel with water, they pushed it down the belly. That way she stayed alive for them not to lose their money. But she was strong. Each and every time she's forced to eat, she waits until they have all left. The fingers goes into the throat, and she threw everything up, continued and died in the process. Oral history has it that the dying wish was to be brought back home. Centuries later, the remains were flown in here, 1998, 31st of July, together with the remains of Samuel Carson. Carson was one of the very first group of African Americans to serve in the US Navy. He was actually born a slave on a slave plantation. He decided to escape, and then he joined the US Navy. Fought during the Mexican-American War in the year 1846 to 48. He died and wasn't given a befitting burial. His great-grandnephew, Sonny Abubakar Carson, was the one who decided to bring the remains of his great-grand-uncle back home. So when they flew them to the airport, they were actually picked on a bus. Going to the dungeon at Cape Coast, they met at a town called Abanze. The entire road got blocked by the entire community. The youth told them that, look, none of these ancestors left here on flight. They were not on a bus. If you had to bring them back, you should have shipped them the same way they were shipped out to complete the cycle. So they actually took them to the shore, performed a ceremony, and they picked them on the boat from the shore of Abanze. They took them all the way to the Cape Coast dungeon. The dungeon has a door called Door of No Return. It simply means you move through it and you are never coming back home. The ancestors left through that door, but they paused and looked back, promising they'll be back home one day. Unfortunately, They are not alive to see it, but then see, they are alive in you because their spirits are still in us. So today we get to represent them here. When they got the people to the